We discussed about variables and how to create variables, variable declaration topic. And then we focused on understanding what are all the things that we can do. So for example, creating a loop, iterating through one particular statements inside that loop, and you're just coming out of it based upon some successive iterations available. And then you have focused more upon uh, conditionals, how to come out of it based on some condition. So today, let's try to focus more upon one more important concept called error handling, and then we'll jump into the new main topic called triggers. So first thing first, you're having two tables called payments and amount. Just check that out from your end, guys, whether you're having those two tables or not. The first table is something referring to select star from payments. And this is the data that we are having. I'll remove everything, truncate payments, and then select star from payments. I'll be having this table. Are you getting the same table, guys? It's there or not? There is one more table called fraud. Truncate table fraud. Select the code, execute it. Now having these two columns or not, everyone? Tables? Yes. Now, no. In my case, some records have been there. I just want to remove those records and I just want to showcase as a fresh table. So I truncated it. In your case, no need to truncate. It's been available fresh. Nothing is there. Okay. So coming to the main point here, let's try to understand the use case first, and then we'll try to proceed further. Again, this error handling concept itself is something we are referring with a topic stored procedures only. Okay. A very important topic. Just focus on it. Whether we discussed about this keyword called DESC, describe. So what we can depict with the help of describe, guys? DESC payments. If you are working with DESC, I think this we discussed right earlier. If you are working with this DESC describe, it explains you what exactly is the table structure, what are the column names, what are the constraints available for those columns, and what are the keys available for it. Here in field section, you are having two column names. The first one is client ID and the other one is amount column. Now what exactly this client ID and amount mean? These are nothing but column names, field names. And here itself, you are having a data type called int, and int, it's integer data type. And here itself, it's something showcasing as yes, no. What does it mean? Null values. If you are having something called yes, what does it mean, guys? This particular column can accept some null values in it, no problem. But if you're having something called no, what does it mean? This particular column will not accept any null values. Now, if I'm going to apply, if I'm going to provide any null value in that amount column, what it will do? It will throw you an error. Yes. Simple thing. Again, once again, I'm explaining, you're having something called field section. In field, it will just showcase you what are the columns available. You're having two columns called client ID and amount. And just beside your field section, you're having something called data type. What is the data type of that column is provided? Integer and integer. And just beside to this, you're having something called null. If yes is there, that particular column will accept null value. If no is there, that particular column will not accept null value. Default, nothing is provided as a default value, it's fine. And no primary or foreign keys are there, it's fine. And there is no such thing called extra. Whether we discussed about a topic called auto increment. Right. If any auto increment is there, that will be provided here. Chalo, pretty much simple understanding. But the main thing that we all need to focus on here is this null section, amount. Here, amount column itself is not accepting any null value. But if you are going to provide, if you are going to push any null value in that column, what will happen? It will throw you an error stating that no, I cannot include any null value in this column. Yes or no? Yes. Now, just down to this, I'm utilizing one more DESC keyword for fraud table. Select this and execute it. Now, how many columns have been there in this table? And what are the column names? ID, client ID, message, TOT. In that payments table, you are having something called ID and amount. What is the client ID and what is the amount? And here you are having something called ID, client ID, message, TOT. TOT itself is nothing but a full form, time of transaction, when the transaction itself has been completed. Now, focus on the data types also. For the first ID, you are providing int, client ID again int, message, it's varchar, and TOT, date type. TOT, time of transaction, is something referring to date, right? Date time, right? So automatically you will be using date time data type. And among all the columns, which column is not going to accept null values, guys? ID, right? And why it is not accepting null value? Here we applied a primary key constraint for that column ID. By default, it will not accept any null values. And here by default section itself is provided, and on top you're having something called auto increment. That means automatically you are going to increment a value for that column. That means while we are inserting the data, I guess we no need to insert any data for that first column, right? Even if you are inserting any data for the last three columns, by default, the first column 1, 2, 3 incremented value. Chalo, fine. Now, let's try to understand the use case. What exactly we are going to do. The problem statement is very simple. As a user, as a customer, you are going to provide some payment details. Okay, you are going to send some money to your friend or any user. If you are sending some genuine amount like 2 rupees or 1 rupee or 500 rupees or 5,000, it's fine. Why? Because that is something like it's a value. Well and good. But instead, if you are providing data points, if you are providing some values, not values but null values, then it will throw you an error. Why? Because you can send 1 rupee or you can send 1 lakh, but you cannot send nothing, right? There is no option itself. You cannot put something like 0 and click on OK transaction, it will not work. So what I mean to say is, if you're putting some value and sending that amount, it's fine, well and good. But if you're providing null value in that amount column, first thing first, the table will throw you an error. Now, what exactly my question is, we need to utilize that error and we need to handle that error now. That means immediately if you are providing a null value in amount column of payments table, that payment table will throw you an error stating that this column will not accept null value. Now, down there, it will provide one error code, right? Now, utilizing that code, you need to insert one more record into fraud table, stating that this user is doing fraud transaction. If user is doing a genuine transaction, some amount that they are providing, it's fine, well and good. That is something that I can directly insert into payments table. But in case if the user is doing a fraud transaction like providing null value, now that particular user related data itself is to be redirected to fraud table. And this is how the concept works. It's clear, everyone? Right. Now, let's try to utilize the code. Select star from payments. And this is how your table looks like. And now I just want to insert some records into the payments table. Provide me the syntax, guys. Insert into payments values, and you just need to provide the values. What are the values? Client ID 1. Shall I'll provide something called 2000. Now, is it a genuine transaction or a fraud transaction? Now, if it is a genuine transaction, this record needs to be something redirected to which table? Payments table. Now, if you are executing select star from payments, is it working, guys? Yes, it's working. Obviously, it need to. I'll insert one more record. Insert into payments, values, and here I'll try to provide values something called 2, 3000. Semicolon, select the code, execute it, and now select star from payments. Now whether this code itself is working or not, yes, it need to work. Now I'll try to insert one more record. Insert into payments, values, and here I'll try to provide some values section like 3, null value. Now whether this particular record will execute into your payments table? Yes or no? See, I'm utilizing this syntax one more time, DESC payments. For client ID, it is showcasing it as yes. What does it mean? This particular column will accept null value. But this amount column will accept null value? No. So if I'm inserting this record, whether this particular record will be executed, inserted into the table, guys? No. Automatically, it will throw you an error stating that Arcus IQ payments doesn't exist. Inside the database, for the table is there called payments. Sorry, this is something. What happened? Arcus IQ payments doesn't exist. Just a minute. They are getting a different error. Payment. Sorry, my bad. Payments. Now, if you are executing this code, you are getting an error stating that column amount cannot be null. That is spelling mistake. That is the reason you're getting this. Okay, now focus on this. Column amount cannot be null. In describe functionality, we just utilize it. That particular column, it is not accepting null value. By default, here you are trying to insert null value in that amount column, so it is throwing you an error. And now if you can see, is it providing any error code to you guys? And what is this error code? 1048. Now we are going to work with a concept called error handling concept. So what we are going to do is, whatever the error that you are getting now, 1048, you need to handle that error. That means if you are inserting a null value in that amount column, now you are getting an error. But now what I'm asking you to do is, whatever the error that you are getting, handle that error now and insert the data into which table? Fraud table. Stating that this customer 3 is doing, this client 3 is doing one fraud transaction. So for that, what I need to do? I need to create one simple stored procedure. See, I'm already having that stored procedure available with me. I'll just showcase you the syntax. Just try to refer to it. Proc fraud. This is the syntax. Let's try to understand. First thing first, don't focus on this. This is something automatically provided by SQL. Create procedure, procedure name. I'm providing it as proc fraud. And here, how many parameters that I'm providing is? 2 parameters. What are those 2 parameters? CID, AMT. CID itself is nothing but it's a shortcut that I'm utilizing for client ID. And what is the second one? AMT. AMT itself is a shortcut utilizing for amount column. Fine. Begin and end statements have been provided here. And between begin and end statements, you are providing this entire code. Now, the main thing, we'll try to understand this code. First thing first, you need to declare an exit handler for that code. What is the code that your error code that you are getting? 1048. Declare exit handler for 1048. That means you are going to handle that error. And what is that error that you are handling for? 1048 error code. And now you will start your begin and end statement. Inside this begin and end statement, you will have a record. And you'll have that syntax called inserting data into fraud table. That is what you want to do, right? In if the user is doing a fraud transaction, that fraud details, that entire record needs to be something provided as a fraud transaction in fraud table only, right? That is the reason here I'm inserting these values into this particular column. Client ID. Is this client ID available in payments table? The same client ID available in fraud table also? If a client is doing a genuine transaction, say for example 2000, now the record will be something reflected as client ID 1 in payments table. But the same client ID, if he is providing a null value, now client ID 1 itself is reflected in fraud table. If he is doing genuine transaction, it will go to payments. If he is doing a fraud transaction null value, it will go to fraud table. Simple. That is the reason I'm using the same CID value. Okay, inside client ID, I'm inserting a value called CID. Okay, what does the CID? The CID is nothing but the parameter. Whenever you are executing this code, it will ask you the parameter. What is the client ID? What is the amount? If you are entering genuine amount, that record will be going to payments. If it is a fraud transaction, it will go to fraud table. And message, what is the message that you want to showcase it as? It's a fraud transaction. Showcase it as fraud transaction. And here TOT. TOT stands for time of transaction. That means you are utilizing one functionality called now function. See, now function is nothing but current date and current time. One more time I'm repeating. When you're working with now function, it's nothing but current date and current time of your local machine. If the current time is 8:03, the time will be recorded now. Date time. Okay, guys. And finally, you need to end that for this entire exit handler. And again, I'm inserting this record. Insert into payments values, the parameter value CID AMT. Why? TOT means time of transaction. Again, why I'm inserting this record, guys? If it is a genuine transaction, that record needs to be inserted into payments only, right? In case if it is not a genuine, then go to fraud. But if it is genuine, you need to go with payments only. That is the reason insert into payments value CID AMT. And then select transaction completed. This is optional message. If you want to showcase, just showcase, or else nothing, leave it. And finally end. Now let's try to utilize this code. I'll try to execute. I'll insert a value called 3 number. Just a minute. I'll provide the client ID value as 3 and amount I'll try to specify it as 3000. Now it will go to which table? Payments table. Execute it and just simply execute this particular code, guys. Payments. Whether this record itself is entered or not, inserted or not. Yes. And just select your fraud table. In this, nothing will be there. Why? Because it is not a fraud transaction. Now, again, select this and run it. I'll provide client ID as 4 and amount I'll try to specify it as 2 rupees. Now it will go to payments or it will go to fraud. Online participants, it need to go to payments table. If you are searching for fraud table, nothing will be there. Why? Because it is not a null value. But if you are searching for payments table, that record will be available here with 2 rupees. And who had done this transaction with 2 rupees? Client ID 4. Chalo, fine, well and good. Earlier, if you are providing a null value, you are getting an error, right? Now, instead of getting an error, now you are going to handle that error. And how you are going to handle that error? That record is something going to fraud table as a record. Now I'll try to provide client ID as 5 and I'll try to provide amount as null. Okay. I'll try to provide something. It's a null value and just execute. Now that record is something going to which table, guys? Now fraud table. Now I'll execute payments table. Now whether that record is going to payments table? No. With client identifier there is no record. But now execute fraud. Now that particular record has been available here. Now what is the ID? 1. Why? Because it's the first fraud transaction. It will showcase as ID 1. But who had done the transaction, guys? Client ID 5. And what is the message? Fraud transaction. At what point of time he had done the transaction, fraud transaction? 9th May 2025, 8:6:47 seconds, that user has done a fraud transaction. And we are getting, if you can see, this is the exact current date and time of your local machine. And this is nothing but now function. I hope it's clear concept. Error handling is nothing but what usually happens is if you are trying to execute a code at some given point of time, you will be getting some errors. But now what you are going to do is instead of stopping there, now you are going to handle that error. And how you are going to handle that error is something you will be working with error handling topic. See, now let's try to understand one more interesting point here, guys. If I'm utilizing this code, if you are inserting one genuine record, whether do you think this entire code will run, guys? No, this entire code will not work. Only this particular line of code will execute. Yes or no? If you're inserting one genuine record, genuine amount value, this entire code will not work. Only seventh line will work. It will try to initiate that payment. Why? Because client ID is genuine, amount is genuine, automatically record will be inserted into payments table. But in case if a not genuine transaction, it's a null value. What usually happens? Again, seventh line only will execute. But while this seventh line will execute, seventh line will generate one error. Why it will generate one error? Here this amount column will not accept null value. And it will generate an error stating that error code 1048, right? Now for that 1048 error, you already declared one exit handler. Now it will go to third line, fourth line, and now it will insert this fifth record. And this is how order will work. Whenever you are inserting one genuine record without null value, seventh line will work and it will execute into payments table. But in case if you are providing a null value, first thing first, the seventh line only will work. But the seventh line will provide you one error, and for that error, it will search any error handler is there or not. And based on that, error handler is there, and based on that, this entire code will start work. And this is how this nature of code works, guys. I hope it's clear, everyone. Online participants? Okay, right. So just check this out, guys, quickly. Okay, right, Alan. It will. So what happened? What is the update? India, Pakistan? Hmm? Yes, yes, exactly. With procedure, we are going to do that. So whenever you're executing any code, there might be a possibility of getting different error codes. It will not be the same code, 1048, right? So what usually happens is how to handle that error is in SQL documentation, you can have a list case. If you're searching for website SQL documentation error handlers, there are codes for each and every code, how you can differentiate, how to handle it, it will provide you set of codes. Based on that, we need to handle it. Every time you'll not get the same code, right? Been completed. Online participants. Uh, Unknown column CLI and in your case the error is spelling mistake, the same as me. Client ID, right? You provided the column name as CLINT. Column name is CLIENT. Just update it, Soumya. Yeah, sure, Anusha. I'll wait for more 2 minutes. Make it fast, everyone. Yeah, Tanya, what's your question? It's a difference between stored. See, both are actually the same thing, but here the functions is something more utilized for reusability, whereas stored procedures are having some extra access thing. That means you can integrate it with variable declarations. Again, you can go with some handlers part. Okay. So connections with some tables, everything more accessibility, you can provide it in procedures. Okay, right, Ramya. We'll wait for 2 minutes for others. Okay. Okay, done. Now, so when I'm entering 0 as amount, it is accepted. Yes, it will accept, guys. On the very first day we discussed, 0 is not a null value. 0 is different, null value is different. Even 0 itself is regarded as a number. Yes. So null is nothing but there's nothing basically empty. Even if you provided quotes and you provided space, that is also some value. But you cannot consider it as null value. Done? Okay. Okay, guys, let's try to focus on today's agenda. This part, especially the last half an hour. Let's go with a new topic called triggers topic. So first thing first, what are triggers? Triggers are nothing but if you want to do one particular task automatically without any interference, you can refer to this topic called triggers. You might get it out again. We had done the same thing automatically, all these things in your procedures also, yes. But the main difference is if you're creating a stored procedure, if you want to execute it or if you want to call it again, you need to do it manually. Call procedure name, or you need to put your cursor and you just need to click on execute button, thunder button. But in case if you're working with a topic called triggers, no need to do it manually from your end. Automatically everything itself has been affecting by default. That means if you want to do something in one table and that is going to be applicable for other table, there this concept comes into picture. Once again, I'm repeating, if you want to do one particular task in one table and some kind of action needs to be performed in the other table, there automatically a connection itself you are trying to establish, and based upon that output itself is going to generate. So in that way you can proceed with this concept triggers. Basically you are having 6 different types of triggers available in SQL, and what are those 6 triggers are nothing but before insert, after insert, before update, after update. Okay, and you're having again 2 more triggers called before delete and after delete. So just by looking into these triggers, what's your conclusion? Before insert, after insert, before update, after update, before delete, after delete. What exactly it means, guys? If in case you're inserting any data into the table, first thing first, you're having before after. Update also before after. For delete also before after variations are there. One common thing, that one important thing that you need to notice here is you are working with data manipulation language. Yes or no? Insert, update, delete. These are the 3 statements available in data manipulation language. One important thing that you need to understand here is while you're working with a topic called triggers, This is something mandatory. DML. Is there any concept that we discussed earlier where triggers is important equally? Sorry, DML is important equally. TCL, transactional control language. There also, if you're utilizing something called commit, rollback, or save point, you're just parallelly utilizing the concept with DML, insert, update, and delete. So here also, if you're working with a topic called triggers, before again you need to work with DML, insert, update, delete. For each and every statement in DML, you're having two variations in it: before insert, after insert; before update, after update; before delete, after delete. Simple. So here, what we are going to discuss, what we are going to do now. Simple. The statements, everything itself is provided here. There are two tables. Select star from books. And I'll do one thing. I'll try to remove this column. We'll do it from scratch. Alter table books, drop column, column name, which is sales. There is one more book table called select star from book, sales. Okay, I'll try to truncate it. In your case, no need to do anything else, just you can focus on normal direct requirements. In my case, I just want to do it from a scratch level. That is the reason I'm removing it. I'll remove this and I'll remove this. Now, if you're executing books table, just update me. How many columns are there in the table? 3. How many rows are there in the table? 14 rows are there. This table consists of 3 columns and 14 rows. And what exactly this table itself is talking about, what are the books available? Book ID, what is a book title, and what is the author ID. Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone, Chamber of Secrets, Half-Blood Prince, Goblet of Fire, Night Without End, all the book titles have been provided here. Now just down there, you're having one more table called book sales table. And this table, there is nothing data available. Now let's try to understand the problem statement first. Requirement is very simple. One user is trying, see, there is a bookstore. There is one bookstore. And owner of that particular bookstore want to understand how much sales are being generated for each and every book, total lump sum sale as well as individual sales. Once again, I'm explaining. The owner of that particular bookstore wants to understand what is the total sales that we are generating for each and every book title, and individual transaction records also I want to access. So what I mean to say is, see, first thing first, again, let's go with DESC thing. First thing first, just tell me one thing. What is the primary key available in books table? Book ID, right? Book ID is the primary key column available in books table. And now what is the primary key column in book sales table? Sale ID. Now what is the common column here? Book ID. Title also there in the table, title also there here in this table. Now let's go with DESC functionality. Describe. DESC books semicolon execute. What are the columns available? Book ID, title, author ID. Data types are provided, null value sections have been provided. Book ID, no. Title and author ID, yes. And primary null, okay, it's fine, well and good, no problem. Now I'll try to execute something called book sales. DESC book sales. Now you're having this particular field section. You're having different data types available. Null values, everything is provided, and primary key auto increment. Now here, this particular itself is not taking null value. Obviously, it is a primary key. Here you're having something called auto increment. if you are inserting any data into this book sales table, no need to consider inserting data for the first column called sale ID. Yes? Why? Because it is automatically incrementing the value. No need to provide any value into that column. Directly you can consider inserting values for next 4 columns. Chalo. Now let's try to understand the use case here. Use case itself is very simple. If you're executing this table, books, you're having all the list of 3 columns available, book ID, title, and author ID. Now, the requirement itself is very simple. First thing first, I just want to create a new column for an existing table. Guys, try to understand the process. It's little lengthy, but not a different code. Whatever the code that we all know, it's a simple code only. Okay. It's basic DML insert statement only. The first requirement is you're having a table which consists of 3 columns. Now the requirement is I want to create a new column for an existing table called sales column. What is the column name? Sales. And by default, I need to provide all the value data points as 000 for entire sales column. Clear? Whatever the sales column is there, I just want to provide all those data points with 000. So simply what I'll be doing is I'll utilize this code alter. If you want to create a new column for an existing table, alter only, right? Alter table, table name. You are creating a new column for which table? Books table. And what is the syntax? Add column, column name. What is the column name? Sales. What is the data type? Int. And what is the constraint? I want to provide by default 0 for all the records. Default 0. That's it. That means you are going to create a new column called books. Okay, sorry, you are going to create a new column called sales for a table called books. And for the sales column, the data type needs to be something int and the value itself is something default of 0. Select the entire code and just click on run button. Automatically, the table itself is, the column itself is something going to be created for an existing table sales column. Clear guys, everyone? Now my requirement is very simple. If a new customer is coming to that bookstore and that customer is purchasing 2 copies of a book, Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince. Once again, I'm repeating, a new customer is coming to that bookstore and that customer just wants to purchase 2 copies of a book, Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince. Then what I mean to do is that value itself is something updated here. That means instead of 0, you need to get a value called 2. Now the same record needs to be parallelly executed into the table select star from book sales also. That means what is a sale ID? 1. What is a book ID of the title? 3. And what is the title? Harry Potter and Half-Blood Prince. Quantity sold 2 copies and time of sale. TOS is nothing but time of sale. In earlier use case TOT time of transaction, right? Here TOS time of sale. Now, at what point of time? You can use now function. Okay. Now, another customer is coming to that bookstore and that customer wants to purchase 5 copies of a book Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire. Now, what is the value that needs to be updated here? 5. And the same record needs to be inserted into your book sales table stating that sale ID 2, book ID 5, 5 or 4? 5. Okay, we'll check that out. Harry Potter and Goblet of Fire. Yeah, 4. So here the record needs to be something executed like sale ID 2, book ID 4, title, quantity sold, and TOS. And based on that requirement, I'll just update the values in my books table and those records need to be something updated in your book sales table. Chalo, now I'll do something different. First thing first, I'll update the values case. If you're updating something, automatically the record needs to, see, one more important point. Here itself, already how many copies have been sold for this book title, Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire? Hmm? Five. Five copies are already been sold for Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire. If a new customer is coming and that customer is also purchasing the same book, Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire, 5 copies. Now what should be the updated value here? 10. But if you are inserting that record into this book sales table, that record needs to be showcased as sale ID 3, book ID 4, title Harry Potter and what is the title? Harry Potter and Goblet of Fire, quantity sold, again 5 copies, and time of sale, time of sale. That means individual record, individual transaction related data, individual customer transactions need to be recorded in book sales. But the total lump sum sale value needs to be updated in books table. Clear with the question? Once again, I'm repeating. If you are taking one particular book title, multiple customers might be going to purchase that book. But the total lump sum amount, the total lump sum count of sold quantity needs to be updated in sales column of books table. But individual transactions, everything needs to be recorded in book sales table. That means if the owner of that particular bookstore wants to understand how many copies are being sold for this particular book title, he need to go to books table. But if the owner of that bookstore wants to understand how many times in a day customers are coming and purchasing this particular book, he need to refer to book sales table. Clear with the question, everyone? So for that, we need to connect books and book sales table. Yes. So what we are going to do now? We are going to create one simple trigger, guys. And where this trigger is available, how to create a trigger is expand your table section. See, once again, I'm explaining everyone. Expand your database, right? You'll expand your database, right? And then expand your tables also. Once if you're expanding your tables, you will be working with a trigger. What exactly you'll be working with? I just want to create a trigger on a table called books table. Simply put your cursor on books table and then just execute this spanner. You'll get a new interface now. Is there any option called triggers? Now select triggers. I think these are the 6 triggers that we just discussed now. Before insert, after insert, before update, after update, before delete, after delete. Now, what is the type of trigger that I'm using is after update. Why I'm using after update? If I'm updating something in the sales column of a books table, based upon that only the data needs to be updated, inserted into book sales, right? After updating only that record is going to be inserted in book sales. So I'm using after update. Here already I'm having a code for it. I'll just showcase it. A simple insert statement, nothing more. See, again, don't focus on this. This itself is something automatically created definer status. Create trigger, trigger name. See, create database, database name. Create table, table name. Create index, index name. Create view, view name. Create procedure, stored procedure name. In the same way, create trigger, trigger name. And here, what is the type of trigger that you are using? After update. And you are using the trigger on which table, guys? Books table. And here you are utilizing something called for each row begins. That means for each row, you want to utilize that concept. As usual, begin and end statements are mandatory. The same begin and end statements you are using in a procedure. Now, between begin and end statements, whatever the logic that you are having, you need to provide it. And this is the simple insert statement logic in for book sales table. That means you're writing a code to insert the data into book sales data table. If you remembered in book sales table for the first column ID, we are having auto increment, right? No need to insert data into ID, right? Directly you can start working with the remaining 4 columns, right? Now what I'll be using is book ID, title, quantity sold, TOS. I'll insert these 4 values. Book ID. Is the same book ID column available in books table or not? That is the reason I'm using old dot book ID. Old new is nothing but old itself is nothing but is there any same name available there or not? Yes, with the same name old, it's been there. So old dot book ID. Is there any option called old there in book table also? Yes. Simply I'll utilize old dot title. Here I'll putting a logic called new dot sales minus old dot sales. I'll explain you. Just give me a minute, 5 minutes. Once we are done with this, I'll explain it. Now function is nothing but at what point of time the transaction completed. Again the same date and time. Now let's try to utilize this. Apply, finish as usual. I'm already created it, so I'm not applying. In your case, you need to apply and finish. Now let's try to understand the logic. See, already we created a trigger, connection itself is there. Now I'll try to update a value, guys. Select star from books table. By default, sales is 0 for everything. So here I want to insert one record. Update, I want to update. So for example, a new customer is coming and that customer is going to purchase 5 copies of a book Night Without End. There is a book title called Night Without End and a customer is coming to purchase 5 copies of this book. That means the sales value should be something regarded as 5 instead of 0. Yes. So here what I'm going to do now. Update. Before using update, I guess you are pretty much clear. Set SQL safe updates equals to 0. Set SQL safe updates equals to 0. Now I'll try to update the data. Update table books. Here in the sales column for this particular Night Without End, I need to update the value. A new customer is coming and purchasing 5 copies of this book. Now what I need to do, guys, update books, set sales equals to 5, where book ID equals to 5, semicolon, select the entire code and just click on execute. You got executed. Now select star from books table. Execute it. Now whether this value itself is updated or not, sales value. Yes. Now what is going to happen in book sales table? This transaction should be recorded there. So automatically, if you are executing select star from book underscore sales, whether this record got inserted, guys. What is the sale ID? 1. But what is the book ID? It's 5. What is the title of that book? Night Without End. What is quantity sold? 5. And what is time of sale? It's 9th May 2025, 8:42 time. That is the same time, I guess, 8:42. And this is how it works, guys. Now, I'll try to update one more value. So for example, one more customer is coming and that customer wants to purchase a book called Harry Potter and Chamber of Secrets. 3 copies. So what I'm going to do now, I'll try to update a value here again. Update books, set sales equals to 3, where book ID equals to 2. Semicolon, select the code and just click on execute run button. And now if you are utilizing select star from books, whether the value got updated or not. Yes. And now when you are executing this table book sales, automatically you are getting that value updated. Sale ID is 2, book ID is also 2, title is Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets, and how many quantity sold? 3 copies. And at what time? 8:43:27 seconds, 9th May 2025. And this is how trigger concept works, guys. In procedure, what you're doing, you're calling it. You're putting your cursor and you're clicking on execute button. Here, nothing. If you're updating something in one table, something is going to change in the other table. So you're having 6 triggers. Based upon your requirement, you need to select any one trigger and you need to work with it. Here, my requirement is I need to update something in this particular table. Based upon that updation, something needs to be inserted into the other table. And this is how it works. Clear, guys? Just check this out, syntax. I'll showcase you that syntax. So before utilizing the syntax, make sure you are creating a new column for an existing table, guys. I'll try to provide this code in the chat, guys. Take this reference. Yes, I'm providing it in the chat. And then make sure you're utilizing your alter table syntax too. Let me share you the syntax of alter also. Select it and execute it. Okay, I'm pasting it in the chat, guys. Both trigger concept syntax as well as this. First, you need to utilize your alter table syntax, and then you need to proceed working with trigger concept syntax. So guys, tomorrow and after tomorrow, make sure practice the stored procedures topic, triggers. At the same point of time, focus more on indexes and views also, window functions. Okay. So there we utilized the data set called Indian foods, right? So try to utilize the same Indian food data set and work with all the different types of window functions that are available. Row number, rank, dense rank, lag, lead, first value, last value, nth value, include your frame clauses. Utilize your views topic as well as index topic. And then same thing goes with procedures as well as triggers. So on Monday, again, we'll start with subqueries, CTEs, some topics have been there, and remaining leftover topics are also there. So on Monday, we'll try to close those topics. So better from next day, Tuesday, or maybe most probably from Wednesday, we'll go with a new module. Okay. Most probably we'll go with Python stats. Both will be learning as a collective part, right? Python and statistics will be covering both combinedly. Alter this one. ఏది ట్రిగర్ కోడా ట్రిగర్ కోడేనా ఓకే Yes, old and new are only utilized in the triggers. Old is nothing but if it's any column itself is available in your existing table, consider it utilizing old. In case if you're having a new, go with new. Once after executing the code, just you need to update the values, guys. Okay. Whatever the updation values that you are having, you just need to update the table. Yeah, see why we are using this old minus new dot sales minus old dot sales is, say for example, try to consider the same use case, guys. I'm working with this table. See, what is the value here in books table? What is the sale value here for Chamber of Secrets? 3, right? Now here what I'll be doing is update books at sales equals to sales plus 5. Let's go with this. What is the value for this night without end? 5. That means 5 copies have been sold. Another customer is coming and that customer also wants to purchase 5 copies for the same book, Night Without End. 5 plus 5, what is the value? 10, right? That means 5 existing value plus 5, 10. So if you are executing this code, now if you are utilizing something called select star from books, automatically you'll get that value 10 for Night Without End. But if you're working with select star from books table, you'll get 5 again. Why? Because existing 5, new one 5, 5 plus 5, 10. That updated lump sum 10 needs to be available in books table, but the new value should be recorded in this table only. Now, the requirement is very simple again. What we are going to do is, why we are having this syntax. Focus on this. new dot sales minus old dot sales is, see what is the new sale value? 10. Minus what is the old sale value? 10 minus 5. That updated value you are inserting into which table? And that is what you are getting here in books table 5. Now I hope you got this logic why you are using this new dot cells minus old dot cells. That is what. I hope it's clear, Nikhil. Okay, right, guys. Yeah, fine. Welcome. Yes, yes, Siddhant. I'll do that part. Then guys, everyone. Okay. Online participants completed. Okay, right, guys. Clear with today's session, guys? Okay. So, okay then. So if no doubts are the okay. In books table, what is the key constraint ML wins? It's relating to the foreign part, index part, Ramya. Okay. Okay, clear? So try to utilize the same concepts, window functions, views, indexes, procedures, triggers as a revision part tomorrow and after tomorrow. So on Monday, we'll resume back with the topic subqueries and CTUs, which might take good 2 days of time. So maybe most probably from Wednesday, I guess we'll start with new module. So we'll go with a combination of statistics and Python. So both as an interlinkage mixed subject, we'll cover it. Okay, guys? Right. So okay then, guys, everyone. Right? Happy weekend. Let's wait for Monday. Okay? Yeah, yeah, Soumya. Okay. Right. Okay then. Bye, guys, everyone. Good night. Online participants. Bye. Yeah, good night.